Just want to throw a preface here. Everything I'm about to say comes from a place of speculation based on personal opinion drawn from available information. I am both fully aware and intensely hopeful for the entirely realistic possibility that I am completely off base here. And if that turns out to be the case, I am fully prepared to both own and own up to my wrongness. Fair? Okay, good. I just wanted that on the record. Anyway, evidently, J.J. Abrams is going to be the guy to do the new Star Wars. I say evidently because it sure as hell seems that way, but I'm still holding on to a sliver of hope that something has either gone awry or will go awry, and he won't actually end up doing it. Yeah, not entirely thrilled about this. Think it's actually a pretty bad idea, in fact. Those of you who follow my Twitter probably already got a sense of that, and while it's possible that I overreacted just a little bit, I do maintain that he's a spectacularly bad choice. Let me see if I can articulate why, on account of that being my job and all. First off, just let this sink in for a minute. If and when this comes to pass, the two biggest science fiction universes in the known history of humankind, wellsprings which have fed the dreams and imaginations of generations around the world, will be under the sway of one man. This one man. Think about what an awesome power that theoretically places in his hands. I'm tempted to compare this to simultaneously being elected Pope and Dalai Lama. For good or ill, the narrative and aesthetic decisions of this one man now have the potential to colonize the collective subconscious of billions of people. Now, ask yourself this, and I'm aware of how this is going to sound, but hear me out. Just who the hell is J.J. Abrams, and what the hell has he done that makes him worthy of that kind of power over the popular culture? And I'm not talking about him paying his dues. Abrams has been around a long time and he's paid a lot of dues. But in that time frame, he's made basically nothing that I'd call particularly noteworthy. He's made a bunch of TV shows, none of which wound up as out-of-the-park home runs when all was said and done. He's directed a total of 3 films, all with a boatload of Hollywood cash to spend, but the best thing I could say about the best of the 3 is that it was pretty good, inoffensive, passes the time, doesn't hurt. That also sums up the other pretty good one, beat for beat, and there's a reason for that. Abrams doesn't really seem to possess the kind of grand thematic or visual, well, vision that makes the difference between a good movie and a great movie. What fires this man's imagination? What are his hopes, fears, desires? What turns him on or off? Based on his films, I couldn't tell you. If any of that creative fire exists within him, it has yet to appear in any of his work. You see, folks, when it was first announced that Star Wars was going to have a post-George Lucas life, the main reason I was excited was that here was an opportunity to get some new, exciting vision and energy into this tired franchise. Any Star Wars movie is going to make $1 billion on the name alone, so here's the chance to break the mold and do something dangerous, interesting, or even just fun in a new way with the boundless opportunities this universe provides. For example, let's say instead of Abrams, the mantle had been passed to, Neil Blomkamp of District 9. Now, Neil paid way fewer dues than Abrams has career-wise because he hasn't been working as long. But you wouldn't hear me asking who does this guy think he is, because I know who he is. A bold, original talent with vision, passion, and something to say with his work. See also Andrew Stanton, Brad Bird, Matthew Vaughn. Heck, forget even the big names, there are tons of fresh-out-of-film school guys slaving away in the commercial and music video salt mines with vision to spare who'd kill for this kind of canvas to paint on. Hey, you know who else belongs in that company? George Lucas. The George Lucas who created Star Wars, at least. The original Star Wars sprang from the mind of a ferociously creative young visionary, and it's deeply infused with the Vietnam-era political, artistic, and even sexual obsessions that define so many other vibrant filmmakers of the era. And just to be clear, that's not to say Abrams won't do a decent job. In fact, decent is probably the perfect word for the guy's entire filmography to this point. Not mediocre, just perfectly, precisely average. There probably won't be anything horrible about it, it'll look and sound superficially like one of the good Star Wars movies, and then all but the most fiercely devoted fans will forget everything about it an hour later because there's just no there in there. I mean, you can hire Brett Ratner if that's all you're aiming for. In a way, I might sort of prefer another late-period George Lucas debacle. Yeah, they were bad, but at least they were bad in fascinating ways. It's been 15 years, and we're still talking about The Phantom Menace. Think about that. Say what you will about Tim Burton's daddy issues, Spielberg's abandonment anxiety, Spike Lee's politics, Oliver Stone's paranoia, Scorsese's Catholic guilt, James Cameron's ego, Joss Whedon's romanticism, or Sam Raimi, Peter Jackson, and Guillermo del Toro's morbid fetish for freaks and monsters, those thematic and aesthetic obsessions are the source of their considerable artistic prowess. Even when Abrams tried to craft a more deeply personal, even quasi-autobiographical film with the well-intentioned but tragically flawed Super 8, all he ultimately had to offer was a slick but empty tribute to mid-1980s Spielberg movies. And you know what? That's not entirely a bad thing. Not everyone is or needs to be a visionary. Someone has to direct time-killing slasher movies, boilerplate romantic comedies, and Jason Statham movies. But Star Trek, even though his movie was, again, not altogether bad at all, deserved better than that, in my opinion. And even after all this nonsense, poor, broken, bruised, worn-out Star Wars, that deserves better too. But the question is, do we? Do we, the audience, do we, the fans, deserve better? Within the last decade, I've watched a bizarre shift taking place within fandom. Whereas once I saw fandom community embrace filmmakers of strong personal vision to take up our franchises, as of late we seem to be increasingly in favor of bland, samey, corporate-focused group approaches that may give us a superficially authentic translation but without any kind of animating soul underlying it. And while Abrams isn't a bad filmmaker by any stretch, from where I sit, he's very much part of that unfortunate paradigm. Setting aside all the ultimately meaningless fanboy nitpicks, my biggest disappointment with his Star Trek movie is that when tasked with coming up with an entirely new framework for the franchise, the best he and his team of writers could come up with was to borrow the plot of Top Gun. Compare that to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, Peter Jackson on Lord of the Rings, Guillermo del Toro on Hellboy, or most recently Joss Whedon on Avengers, great filmmakers who made great films that were not only true to their origins, but also unmistakably the work of the visionaries helming them. When did we become afraid of that? Have we really reached the point where we prefer rote mediocrity to vision because it's safer? I sure hope not. I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.